Once a giant, always a giant. For me, it's only a giant.
What's going on YouTube? Diggy546. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you're new. Like the video if you like the video. And I won't tell if you click that bell. But let's go ahead and get into this. So I did not know that this podcast existed. This is the second podcast in about 2 weeks that an NFL coach or NFL player had that I had no idea of. I did not know that Sean McVay and Peter Schrager from NFL Network, shout out to NFL Game Day Morning. They show a lot of love to the Giants. They are pretty much the only show that you can watch that isn't like biased one way or another towards a certain team. Like you don't just see blind hate towards any team. You know, I really don't see that there. So props to them for actually being good journalists and not showing bias. But besides that, Peter Schrager's on there, Sean McVay's on there, and they have a podcast. And this week, apparently last week they had Kyle Shanahan, but this week they have none other than Joe Judge, the Giants' new head coach, second-year head coach at this point. And everybody's excited to hear from him because when he first got signed, nobody respected him. They said, who is this guy? Even a lot of Giants fans said, this is stupid. But after that first press conference, the Giants fans seemed to all like him. I know I did. And then as the season went along, the team got better and better every week. Joe Judge is starting to get respect from his peers, other coaches, as well as respect in the media for how good of a job he's doing coaching the Giants. And I think it was a great opportunity for him to come on there with another coach, another young coach who was kind of in his position, and just talk football and talk their journeys. And Joe Judge came on there and he talked a lot about Bill Belichick, Nick Saban. First, I want to start from, just him. Before, we all knew he was a kindergarten teacher, kindergarten PE teacher, actually. And it's just crazy to think that someone can go from that to being a head coach in the NFL. There's 32 of those positions in the entire world, and he's one of them. And it's really inspirational to know that he started off, of course, as a player, I think, at Mississippi State. Then he was a GA, graduate assistant, and then he ended up going to a D3 school. Actually, he learned about coaching, about videography, because he had to do that. He had to mark the field, put the chalk down on the field. He had to do pretty much everything because those D3 schools, they don't have the budget to hire somebody for this and that and this and that. So Joe Judge got a lot of experience in every area down at that D3 school. I think it was called Birmingham Southern. D3 school he said it was their second year actually playing football there. So that was really interesting. I did not know that part about it, about his journey. And then he goes from there to he was going to go to Mississippi State, I think, but that was a little bit later. But he went from that D3 school, of course, to Alabama. That was through a connection that he made at that school. So it just shows you to take every opportunity that you think can put you on the path to where you want to be. And he went there and did the interview with Nick Saban. And I thought this part was pretty funny. While he's interviewing with Nick Saban is having him draw stuff on the board, and then he leaves for like 20 minutes. And he's just standing there waiting for him to come back. And then he comes back with some guy that Joe Judge said he's never seen after that day, which leads me to believe that it was Nick Saban's friend or something, or some random guy that worked at the school. But he brings him in there, and then they just take turns making fun of Joe Judge's suit, his clothes, the way he's standing, all of that. And they're still, wanting him to draw up the plays on the whiteboard. And he said he passed it pretty much with flying colors. He didn't let it get to him. They started talking football. And, the history was that. It was, then from there on, he became an Alabama special teams coach. So that was a pretty interesting story. Or I think at that point he might have been assistant special teams coach, but he was working at Alabama. He worked there for a couple of years. And he actually was supposed to go to the New England Patriots because they had a connection with their special teams department. So he was supposed to go there in 2011. He ended up not being able to go there because the lockout happened and everything, kind of slowed each other down. And then the next year he was supposed to take a spot at Mississippi State, sort of a promotion there, but, not a head coaching spot. But he was supposed to take a spot there, And then he gets the call back from New England, and he decided that he was going to go ahead and honor his commitment to Mississippi State. That coach there then called him back, a couple weeks later and told him, go interview, this is a great opportunity. So without that coach calling Joe Judge back and telling him that, I can almost guarantee you that he's not in the spot that he's at right now, because, he could probably be the head coach of Mississippi State right now. We know it was between us and Mississippi State for a head coaching position just this past, offseason before this past one. So obviously, if, he's still deciding for that job now, he definitely probably would have just worked his way up and became the coach there at Mississippi State, which who knows how that goes. So he ended up being a head coach in the NFL. He goes to the Patriots. He talked a little bit about Julian Edelman, talked a little bit about Tom Brady and just their attention to detail, how they want everybody to meet them at their intensity level. The interview with the Patriots, of course, is some shenanigans again, like how it was with Nick Saban. Bill Belichick is like taking off his shirt and taking off his shoes and his pants and changing while he's in the interview, because Bill Belichick had a dinner. And like while he's interviewing Joe Judge, he's changing his clothes to go to a dinner. So Bill Belichick and Nick Saban are characters. We all knew that. But it's just funny to see that from another point of view. They're just so casual. Like Bill Belichick, he said he wasn't doing it to throw him off the way that Nick Saban was. But it just shows like how much he just doesn't care. So I thought that was pretty funny. And then on top of that, he ended up working there, learned a lot from Bill Belichick. He said that he learned from both of them that, you have to harp down on the fundamentals. Fundamentals are everything. You have to pay attention to detail. He talked about how he worked the hardest that he ever worked during those two teams, but he also had the most fun that he ever had. So Joe Judge got to learn from, in my opinion, the two greatest coaches in their respective sports. I mean, if you count college football, it's a different sport. Nick Saban is the GOAT there. Bill Belichick is the GOAT here. And then he's got a really big lead in front of anybody else that wants to challenge him for that spot, in my opinion. I don't care what happens. Now that Tom Brady is gone, the dude is unmatched the way he coaches a football team. But heading back to New England, like of course he talked about Julian Edelman and Tom Brady and his favorite guys there, and how his job was put on the line sometimes in front of the entire team. So that's interesting that Bill would do that in front of the players, but sounds like something he would do. And then, of course, he ended up in New York, and he's talking about how he's still developing. He's still learning things as it goes. He's learning, when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive, how to manage the game, because, of course, he's not calling plays. So he's focusing on how he can manage the game in all three facets. And it just shows you in football and the corporate world and anything that you're doing, there's different ways to do it. Of course, he was talking to Sean McVay and Peter Schrager. Peter Schrager is someone who kind of had a Joe Judge-like story where he worked his way up through hustling and writing articles for cheap and all of that stuff. But Sean McVay, he was lucky enough to already have some kind of connections in the NFL, so it was a little bit easier for him. And of course, he's an offensive guy, so he worries about calling plays, and he has someone to help him manage the game that watches everything from up above to help him with the clock, which makes sense. So, I mean, we had guys like Shermer and Ben McAdoo. They were trying to manage the clock, manage every aspect of the game, and call plays, and we saw how that worked out. So, McAdoo, his play calling suffered. Shermer, his game management suffered. So, not everybody can be a Sean McVay, can be as brilliant as that. And, Joe Judge isn't some offensive mastermind. Joe Judge is doing what he does best, which is making sure that everybody is on their P's and Q's, managing the game to the T, being a stickler for the fundamentals, for all of those things that need to be done in every aspect of the game. And of course, as a special teams coach, he's been rallying the troops for years. As a special teams coordinator, you pretty much stand in front of the entire team. So he's been able to do this for years, and I'm just glad he's our coach. We're in good hands. We're in great hands. And it was just a fun interview. I'm going to drop the link to it I pretty much summarized most of it, but I'm going to drop the link to it. I didn't get to everything. You guys should definitely give it a listen. And I would just say, I mean, if you're interested in it, you should probably look at their other episodes too. Probably really interesting listens. So you guys let me know what you think about it if you heard it. And just let me know what you think of Joe Judge so far since he's been the Giants head coach. If you made it this deep into the video, come on, just hit the subscribe button. I make Giants content primarily, draft content secondarily, and during the season, I'm going to be doing a lot of reacting to pretty much most of the NFL games and everything NFL. So if you made it this deep, go ahead and join the D6 squad.